I'm going to come to this man because he's got a very strident. Can you Can you get down here? And I'll give you the last question. I'll go to this woman here.
Everyone says this, but this is for both speakers. In a discussion that we've heard so much about the dangers of extremism, I would like to hear more about tolerance.
Start with you, Professor Brummett.
Well, I think tolerance can be a good thing. It can also be very much misplaced. I think rather than tolerance, I'd rather have wisdom, because I think wisdom will do what tolerance would otherwise do. And again, back to the hobby horse I rode in here on, I think that a rhetorical training is more inclined to provide that wisdom, where if one hears what we might call an intolerant statement, just saying to yourself, well, be tolerant, because perhaps perhaps the statement is true. There are some things of which we ought not to be tolerant. I think it's a wiser course of action to ask, what ought we to affirm and what ought we to critique? And I think that will produce a better world.
I think there's an indissoluble element of patronization and condescension in the idea of tolerance. I mean, would you like it if I said, I'll tolerate you? Would you not feel, well, thanks a lot? Who asked you? Do I need your permission to exist or to say what I say? No, I think I would rather assume your right to do that. Then it would depend what you said. It's like being forgiven. Mother Teresa once said she forgave me. I thought, that's supposed to sound nice, but I didn't ask her for forgiveness. Hadn't actually done anything that required me to do so. And I'm not completely sure what gives her the power to bestow it in any case. Again, a tremendously serene condescension on the part of someone who wasn't as modest as she looked. You notice, by the way, that the most faithful people are the ones who go on the most about humility and being how humble and how modest they are. He said, no, just fine, don't pay attention to me. I'm just going around doing God's work all the time. I'm carrying out his instructions. It's okay, I'm not getting in your way. That's not very modest, is it? There's no humility there. That's a tremendously arrogant claim. In the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, the great Queen Bess, an attempt was made to put an end to religious warfare in Britain. In other words, the killing of Christians by Christians over what Christianity was or was not. And the legislation that tried to bring it to an end was called the Toleration Act, whereby some sects of Christianity were told that henceforth they'd be tolerated. Again, I think that's an insufferable way to be spoken to. And just because I don't want to, and refrain from joining in the applause for the much too inclusive statement that Professor Brummett just made, I would say that many statements made by the religious are intolerable. I don't think it is tolerable that people be told, that children be told by their parents or by their teachers that if they don't obey certain religious precepts, they will go to hell. Or that they can congratulate themselves that they won't go to hell, but that their neighbors or schoolmates who practice another religion most certainly will. I think that's intolerable. I think it's antisocial. I think those who say, as was said about 10 years ago to Americans by Osama bin Laden, we can always call off this attack on you if you like. We can cease denouncing you as a bunch of corrupt hedonists run by the international Jewish conspiracy, given to full-time offenses against chastity, the vermin and scum of the earth, meet to be killed, fit to be killed any time or any place in the name of God. We can always call it off if you'd like to become Muslim. Then we can accept you completely. And he's repeatedly said in his broadcasts, which I'm glad to see have now come to a terminus, that showed how broad-minded he was. After all, he said, I warned them and I gave them an offer. They could prostrate themselves in front of me or they could be considered legitimate targets. Well, that's his view of being tolerant, and that's my definition of the intolerable.
The final question to my brother over here. Not really my brother, but...
This is a question to Professor Brummett. You mentioned culture being more just an art. You mentioned a person working in a soup kitchen, for example, and I would say that isn't your view of what culture is a more secular view than what it would have been, say, 100 years ago, and that culture, the simple street culture, being imposed on people by religion itself? Thank you.
Well, there's no doubt that we're becoming, the world is becoming more secular. And so 100 years ago, I think one might not have worked in a soup kitchen without some sort of religious justification. And today, of course, people work in soup kitchens for all kinds of justifications, not necessarily religious ones. I guess what I was trying to say is I think it is possible, though, that there are many people who work in soup kitchens or engage in all manner of cultural practices who do so because of their religious or spiritual convictions. And the point that I was trying to make was that if we're going to tot up a number of innocents slaughtered by religion as against the number of sculptures that are made by religion, which of course is an impossible task, then I think we also need to think about the production of everyday culture, of everyday art, which is sort of the dark matter of culture that we've been talking about. And I think my point was that needs to be included in this still impossible task of weighing.
Did you want to... Go ahead.
Well,
go ahead.
I don't know if the question was directed at me or not. I do have an answer if it was.
I think we can take an answer from you. Yes, go ahead.
It's very, very frequently argued against my position. Look at all the good works that religious people do. And I must say, I don't think it even deserves to be called an argument. I mean, isn't it the case, are we incessantly told, and isn't it in fact true, I know it to be true, that Hamas, for example, is the welfare agency for many impoverished Palestinians? As far as I know, that claim isn't completely void. I've seen it happen, in fact, with Hezbollah too in South Lebanon. Let's not deny it. They do try and provide a safety net for people, and of course in return for political support and dragooning, it doesn't alter the fact that Hamas and Hezbollah are totalitarian organizations wedded to violence and to racism. On their websites you can read reproductions, literal straight-out reproductions of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. The attempt to get back into the mainstream an anti-Semitic fabrication that was the Bible, if you like, of the Nazi Party, and before that of the Russian Orthodox right wing, who are the people who actually put it together. The charity work and the political and religious work seem to me either either irrelevant to each other, or the one is supposed to be an excuse for the other, which I think wouldn't wash. Mormons, for example, will always tell you how great the work of their missionaries is in Africa. Why are they telling me this? All I said to them was, your religion is based on a forgery by a well-known conjurer and fraud who claimed to have found gold plates from God in a hole in upstate New York. People who believe in it are deluded. It also, for a very long time, refused to admit that black people had souls or could join the church in any real capacity. Only amended that view just in time for the passage of the Civil Rights Act, in point of fact, which casts doubt, I think, on how sincere Its repudiation was, so you have missionary work as well? I'm sorry to hear it, if it's spreading that garbage. Now, the Roman Catholic Church, which boasts of its charities, Catholic Charities is a big deal anywhere you go in the world, where I often do, to see the work of groups like Médecins Sans Frontières, or UNICEF, or many other excellent organizations that are completely secular and do the work for its own sake, and are not proselytizing while they do so, which to me makes them superior deliverers of charity. You will find the Catholic charities at work as well, but I would trade every dime they spend for just a couple of small things: that the church would drop its opposition to birth control, which is the real cause of poverty in the world, is the refusal to allow women control over their reproduction. We have a cure for poverty. It's known as the empowerment of women. The Catholic Church stands foursquare against it and leads to untold and incalculable suffering that a lifetime of charitable work won't help them to make up. And then I think I would ask them also to add that one day they'll want to criticize themselves for having said that while AIDS may be very bad, condoms are much worse. I think a positively wicked statement with absolutely appalling consequences for the health and welfare of millions of people. So the more they try and drag up the soup kitchen, the more they're going to regret it.
Well, this has been a really, really, really interesting evening and a most enlightening one. And I have to thank, first of all, Professor Barry Brummett, who's up here from Austin, Texas. Your presentation was sophisticated, enlightening, much more than a hobby horse. And we thank you very much for being up here with us. And if I may, as I understand the story goes, when we found out just a few weeks ago, or not so long ago, that Christopher Hitchens wouldn't be able to come here in person, there was some talk of, well, canceling the event. He may not be in good enough health, and he insisted that he still wanted to do the event. And sir, you look great. I mean, and energized, and it is fantastic to have you be part of this. Thank you, Christopher Hitchens. I don't know if you can see the audience standing, but if I could package them and send them to you that way, that's what's happening here, sir. Thank you for this.
Very, very kind of you. I do appreciate it, really. Thanks.
Thank you to the University of Waterloo, Shelley, Fraser, all the provost, all the folks who put this together. Congrats to the English department on your 50th anniversary. Thank you all for having me, and good night.